What's up, fellow nerds? Phreak here. Teamfight tactics have gotten their first official patch post-launch, and I'm here to talk about it in patch 9.14. If you're looking for the League of Legends, the MOBA patch notes, that's in the description below. Follow that link, it'll get you there. Otherwise, welcome to the TFT patch rundown. I do these every patch, and I'm going to keep doing it for the foreseeable future. Alright, so first things first, Twisted Fate now exists. He is a 2-cost sorcerer. He is a pirate as well, which means now you don't need Gangplank to get pirate bonuses. And you don't have to necessarily go Gunslinger as well, because now you can do something like Pike, Twisted Fate, Gunslinger, like Gangplank or Graves, but you don't have to like also run Trist and Lucian because you're already halfway there. You might as well. So this kind of lets you go Pirate into Sorcerer in the early game. That said, I think Sorcerer is very weak early game, so there's probably not a reason to do so. But hey, if you're trying to just sort of lost streak into Pirates, or you just find TF before you find Gangplank, then cool, you're running 2 Gunslingers for a while, and hopefully you have a front line. Overall, I would say this is actually a pretty cool unit. He can be a support, which is actually really interesting that there are some support characters in TFT, and so you have characters like Lulu that keep your guys alive and whatnot, and obviously you want to run things like Cho Gath or Leona or whatever else to tank for you, but if TF pulls a blue card, you give your Brand or your Aurelion Soul or your Karthus or whoever a bunch of mana, and they get their spell off soon. That's really valuable. If you land red card, well then he's the damage to carry. If you land gold card, you obviously stun whatever frontline you're hitting, which is reasonably useful as well. So, okay, from what I've seen watching high-level players play on PvE, you don't tend to keep TF around for a very long time, but if you do happen to find yourself on like 7 units and you're playing mid-game with Sorcerers, you get a spatula, then hey, maybe TF sticks around and you're playing Pirate Sorcerer a little bit longer. That seems unlikely. There's not really a reason to play Pirates at like level 7, but there's a small chance it happens. If you high roll and he's, gold Twisted Fate, then maybe you do that, but he seems to be, mostly from what I've seen, there to be a Pirate buff. Ranked comes out. That's super exciting. I'm very curious to see how well I stack up. I know I'm an above average player, but I don't know how much. I think I'm at least a platinum player. We'll see where it goes from there. I know platinum is not super high praise, so I'm going to hope that I can get high diamond or something. We'll see what happens. A lot of this actually surprises me. I read through the patch notes briefly before recording this one. There are lots of mechanics I didn't understand about the game that I'm learning as it goes on. So as always, I'll try to admit mistakes when I have them. But anyway, worth pointing out that attack speed used to be a flat attack speed gain. So a Recurve Bow was 0.15 attacks per second, not 15% more attacks. That has changed. That is now actually 20% more attacks. It's being buffed to 20%, I believe. Maybe it didn't actually. I remember seeing somewhere that it was 20%. Maybe it's not anymore. Sometimes patch notes have errors in them. But now it actually scales with the DPS of the character it's on instead of being a flat attack speed increase. What this means is basically attack speed items aren't nearly as good on brawlers anymore. And they're also not nearly as good on typically slow attacking mages. Look at a champion like, let's say, Karthus. And Karthus' base attack speed is actually 0.65, which is not too bad. Anivia is like a 0.6, which is pretty weak. Brand is 0.6, which is pretty weak. Veigar is at 0.55, which is quite bad. And by comparison, like Varus is 0.7, Kayle is 1.1, Misfortune is 0.85. So champions like that, who tend to actually be marksmen, are going to, essentially, they're going to get more mana per second out of attack speed. Is what that really comes down to. Not kind of things like Sorcerer bonus, which obviously then is its own multiplier, and they go down the rabbit hole and whatnot, but that's kind of that conversion, right, if that makes sense. So it is still X% more mana gain from auto-attacking. It is still X% more DPS. It was actually scaling wildly with slower attackers got more value out of the Recurve Bow. Next up is some loss prevention on PvE rounds. Which is basically if you got 0 items, you at least get gold, which actually I think is actually pretty decent. I think this works out pretty well in the early game, and was actually what I had thought was going to be the right way to do loss prevention was, you know what, you might not have gotten items, but you're going to catch units early. You're going to win streak because you got 2 silver units earlier on because you got 4 bonus gold or something. And so you are more likely to find units, or you leveled up early because now you get a 5th unit on the board, and so you're more likely. So there's a lot of things where I think gold does do a decent job of keeping up, and I think it's a decent loss prevention, and I'm excited to see how far that goes. I know there's some high level players who think it's garbage and items are really the thing that matters, and there's some high level players who are like, do you not want pirates early? Like, so we'll see. Ranked is only ever 3 people at a time. I think that's completely reasonable and smart to do. Also worth pointing out, the 2 dragon fights are no longer immune to magic damage. I think that's actually a positive for the game. Certainly, Sorcerers were probably the most overpowered comp in 9.13 because of Locket stacking, but with Locket stacking going away, Sorcerers probably need a little bit of help, or at least not be screwed by PvE rounds that sometimes drop like completed Phantom Dancers. So I think this is worthwhile. That's a good thing, I think. 6 XP shorter to get to level 9 is useful from what I had seen. I've played a lot of games to like Final 3, and you very rarely decided to go to level 9. This is still only a difference of 4 or 8 gold for you as a player. So yeah, okay, yeah, it saves you somewhere between 2 and 4 rerolls, but I guess you're now more likely to consider level 9 if you're doing pretty well. I'm still going to guess the vast majority of games, the winner ends at 8. Maybe they have Force of Nature, but they're going to end at level 8. That's fine. I actually think this game should not reliably get you to level 9. I think that's completely wrong, even for Final 2. I think it should be only sometimes the choice, and now it's going to be sometimes more the choice. Cool ability targeting update, so champions like Lulu and probably Nidalee as well. Going to determine lowest health by percent HP instead of total HP, so Lulu doesn't self-ult when she's got a 1/3 health Shyvana in front of her. That's going to be a positive thing. That's a good change. Definitely worth having at least abilities work reliably, I think is a positive here. Also a good change that I'm glad exists is if you are, let's say, fighting someone and you are 6 XP from leveling, you can buy 4 experience. You'll get 2 from the fight, you will level up, then the shop will roll. This now gives you a reason to potentially save 4 gold and essentially level up in between the rounds, sort of in that sense. And you will get an advantaged reroll or an advantaged roll as a result, instead of it being always correct to wait for the round to end and then, well, level up if you decide you want to. This is good because it adds just one other small choice you can make as a player. Streak indicators is good on user interface. Combat recap is good. And now you can see more champion stats when you click on them, which is a positive as well. Absolutely love it. Next up, people realize that, yeah, demons are actually really, really good, even with just 2. 40% chance to do all of their max mana in true damage and then reduce all of their mana to 0. Really, really absurdly powerful. I think it's very correct that this has been so heavily pushed out to the sides here. 25% for 2 units is probably far superior. The 4 demon bonus is not going to be very different, honestly, between 60 and 50. It's not going to be that huge of a change. It'll be of similar reliability. Obviously, sometimes you're going to miss and Pike's going to get a stun off. It's going to be sad, but that's cool. And then, hey, 6 demon, I think, was probably never worth running. Now it's ultra reliable. If you can get demon Volibear, he's going to just ruin your entire day every time. That's fine. I think this is a good change because, yeah, 2 demons is definitely far too good. Speaking of too good, I definitely agree that 3 elementals is far too good. Now, Brand was always the damage carry in this comp, but it was pretty easy to find a Brand around level 5 or 6. Suddenly you have a 3,000 health front line, which, by the way, is more than almost every tank ever. I mean, you can even look at items like characters like Shen and Aatrox at 3-star don't get 3,000 health. And even then, you didn't often get them to 3-star. So, good to see elementals nerfed a little bit. It was definitely it was especially overpowered because of how easy it was to get to overall. Drop in 3 units, none of them are that bad. They at least provide crowd control or damage. Good to see this going down. Less of a beater as well, which is probably positive. So this is definitely a really big nerf to Elementalist. Will say the primary value of the set was the health. The damage going down matters, but is not so huge that it means everything. But hey, good to see Elementalist getting nerfed. I think definitely still viable and still a solid mid-game bridge. When you really don't hit anything, just grab Lysandra and Kennen, and then when you get to purples, just grab Brand. Okay, congratulations. You're going to stop losing so hard for a little while. Kind of cool to see that you can get multiple Guardians in, so you can get, Braum, Leona, and then a second Braum and get more armor on everyone. This matters more later on, we'll look at that in a little bit. There are going to be some things that scale with armor, specifically Thornmail. That's going to be kind of cool. Next up, Gunslinger. Fix some bugs around not even getting the auto attacks off. Improve visualization of what the AoE attacks look like so that you can kind of spot them more reliably. Also, big, huge change. You no longer hit all 7 opposing units with 4 Gunslingers. You only hit 2 other units. Gunslinger, if I recall properly, is a 50% hit chance. So essentially 2 Gunslingers is a 50% DPS bonus. 4 Gunslingers is a 100% DPS bonus. Still a very good set bonus when you keep in mind that I believe you get all the benefits you would normally get with on-hit effects with things like, gaining extra mana and whatnot. When you consider things like Ranger and Blade Master, this becomes a fairly similar power level of damage amp. So, obviously a really, really big nerf going down from all units hit to only 2, but probably needed once you realize that they fixed the bugs where you wouldn't get your attacks off sometimes. So, we'll see what it looks like in the real game. Also want to point out that generally speaking, Gunslingers tended to have pretty high attack speed. I'm looking, let me find them because I have them somewhere. I'm on the melee grouping. Hang on. I can get you. I can get this. It doesn't matter. It's not important enough. Hold on. Control F, Tristana. Tristana had 0.7 attacks per second. Yeah, so she was one of the higher attack speed characters. It was very easy to screw up with that. So essentially, yeah, rapid fire cannon Gunslinger is somewhat of a thing of the past. It's very easy to have 2 other units in range. You don't have to go rapid fire cannon them anymore. Also, with all the reliability, you're probably going to see a lot of debuff items on them, like Red Buff or Cursed Blade or Hush, or you make Tristana a demon or something. And yeah, hitting the entire opposing board, probably a bit broken, so down that goes. Pirate bonus getting nerfed slightly. Again, we talked about the reliability of Pirate coming in with Twisted Fate coming out, so that I think makes a lot of sense. It's down by basically the entire buff is 20% less good than before, which is not trivial, especially because you're probably going to lose pretty reliably with Pirates in general, especially with Gunslingers getting nerfed. It's pretty easy to lose with Pirates. You can win with Pirates, but you can also lose with them. Especially because you're hunting for the set bonus, and the set bonus does not give you any damage stats. Instead of hunting for just putting in silver units, in general, I kind of expect you would lose with Pirates. Shapeshifter getting a bug fix where now it used to only give you the rank 1 of the character, the bronze unit health every time. Now it gives you the right amount based on what tier you are, but the health gained is not 100% of the tier. So I actually ran the math on that. And essentially what it comes down to is if you are like a 500 health unit, it doesn't really matter. Let's just say 500, for example. Right? If you're a 500 health unit and you transformed, you go to 1,000 health. Now, instead, you go up to 800 health because it's only 60%. So essentially, the way the math works out, Shapeshifter is 80% of whatever HP you would have had at bronze tier. It is 103% of the health you would have had at silver tier. So really no change, and 125% of the health that you would have at gold tier is the way the math works out. Now, it's very hard to get gold shapeshifters who aren't Nidalee and Elise. It's almost impossible to find it for Swain, it's almost impossible to find it for Gnar, and it's very hard to find it for Shyvana. It's possible, it might happen, and if you do find gold Shyvana, she has 25% more health than before with shapeshifter bonus. But honestly, worth pointing out that for the bronze tier units, the shapeshifter bonus is not very good anymore. It's only 6% more health, and it's not really worth hunting that bonus. It's really only worth it when you've got units you care about at silver. Small buff to wild bonus, giving a little bit more attack speed. Keep in mind it stacks 5 times, so it's up to 5% more attack speed overall as a buff. And so doing the wild sorcerer's bridge kind of helps a little bit make up for what you lost with the recurve bow changes, because a lot of those sorcerers had pretty low attack speeds. Okay, so overall, I think all these changes make sense. Elementals and Demon were definitely a bit too strong, and there wasn't really an incentive to go for 6 Demons, so that's kind of cool to see. Guardian stacking is pretty cool. Gunslinger getting nerfed is completely reasonable and fine. I think they were out of line with the kind of things they could do, because once they got reliable, they got absurd. I'm not confident this is actually going to be an overall power down to Gunslingers. In the late game, probably, but in the early game, probably not, because of the reliability gains. Pirate nerf needed because of Twisted Fate. Okay, on we go. Shapeshifter's fine. So, Darius no longer whiffs abilities. This is cool. There's a lot of changes this patch around abilities being reliable and going off when they should. So, Darius no longer whiffs abilities when no one's around. Elise becoming a 1-drop is a really big deal. So, she does get weaker. She transforms a lot later. Keep in mind, if you get Shapeshifter bonus early on, like if you somehow find like an early Shyvana, and so you're playing, Silver Nidalee, Silver Elise, 1-star Shyvana, okay, then, you're kind of useful, but keep in mind you're going to transform much later. Elise is getting less spiderlings overall, so she's really providing a lot less. She's a lot squishier as a character. Yes, you're going to level her up more easily because, you're going to get her to silver tier, and she's going to have more health than a bronze 2 drop. But yeah, definitely a lot squishier as a character. This is very frail. 450 plus 20 armor is on the very low end of this game. Transforms less reliably, but so the Spiderlings gain Demon Origin, which is really, really huge. So definitely feels like Elise can be quite good. Keep in mind that you're only getting this 25% hit rate. But if you have a Silver Elise, she's 3 units by herself. Silver Elise with a Varus in the background. You have essentially, once she transforms, if she transforms, you have 4 demons. So you're going to roughly mana burn once per round of auto attacks, which is pretty good. So Elise, I think, is going to be a meta-defining champion. She's going to enable Demon really, really early on. I think Aatrox is heavily underrated, so Elise is a good Aatrox bridge as well to get up to 4 demons with like Morgana in there. This is going to get pretty nutty pretty quickly. I can really see a 6 demon comp coming online, because keep in mind, with 6 demons, you actually will have a front line. You have an easy mage backline with the brand. He's good by himself. You have a really good front line if you can transform Elise. I don't know if you want to give her mana or not, but maybe she can transform and be some front line there as well, because she'll be easily into silver tier without problems. Also worth pointing out that you can get silver Elise and sell her for full cost. So she's another unit where you can be happy about kind of finding in the early game. Getting her to silver, throwing Varus in for a while, and when you transition out, you can sell them all for full price. So that's kind of a big deal there. Fiora gaining huge damage here. And this is actually pretty meaningful because this puts Fiora at 40 DPS as a bronze tier unit, which is very, very high. It's bigger than Shen, it's bigger than Zed, it's barely below Aatrox, it's only a little bit below Volibear, it's above Shyvana. At this point, you can maybe care about Fiora. And especially with her spell getting so much more damage, going 1 to 250 to 400, Fiora is no longer hot garbage. Now, Fiora is still absurdly squishy. Her max HP at gold tier is 1440, which is comically low. Even Graves has more health than that, and Graves gets nerfed this patch. Fiora is very squishy, but she's suddenly a high damage unit. And being a bronze, or being a 1-cost unit, it is not that hard to get 9 copies of Fiora. And Fiora now being squishy DPS, you put her on the second line, she wraps around and starts auto-attacking. She could potentially be a very, very, very big deal damage-wise. Right? Gold Fiora has 144 DPS. That's very high. So there are some real considerations here that you might want to care about. This really shifts what Fiora does as a character. Keep this in mind. Graves was a very easy frontliner. It actually wasn't a great frontliner because his stats weren't that high, but he was easy to get to gold, tier, to get to 3-star. Yeah, you kind of ended up seeing results where Graves would frontline with a red buff and kind of do crazy things. So you're seeing a lot of these gunslingers lose some power here. Gunslinger often became pirate and vice versa. So yeah, Graves was certainly often ended up being a fairly big deal. Interested to see that Vayne actually is getting buffed. I didn't realize that she needed them. But, a small, almost 10% DPS increase, of course, matters with Silver Bolts, matters with all the other damage items you give her. This was definitely a champion where you typically gave her lots of Recurve Bows and you wanted her to be a carry. Considering Recurve Bows weren't going to multiply as well anymore because her base attack speed is multiplied instead of a flat added attack speed bonus on Recurve Bow. This is probably needed. This is probably necessary to keep her up to date as a character. And now Warwick applies on hit effects. Now, I'm not certain, because in League of Legends, the MOBA, every tick of the ultimate applied on hit effects. I don't know if that's actually going to be true here. It's probably going to be just a single time. But it means at least he'll ult and apply red buff to someone, or if it is, if he does apply on hit effects 3 times, he's going to apply a lot of static shiv. That's going to be kind of interesting. So we'll see what happens with that. Could be interesting. But at least applying 1 is decent, because you put red buff on your ult target, or something like that, which I think is cool. Next up, yeah, Ahri, back half of the ability will deal damage while dead. Retargets the ability if it was going to miss, or if it was going to die. And now will target her current attack target. And I do want to point out that it's still possible to miss this ability. If you give a rapid fire cannon, her attack range is longer than her ult range. So just keep that in mind, that hey, don't put rapid fire cannon on Ahri. But the extra reliability on the spell is going to make Ahri a pretty good mid-game carry. Getting Ahri to silver is not that hard. It's not hard to get wild bonus on, especially with the wild bonus being better. It's not that hard to find 3 sorcerers. She can be a pretty reliable mid-game character with this extra reliability. This is going to be a pretty big deal. This is going to be a very big power up to Ahri, and she's probably going to be really useful here. Now, of course, we already think Elise is very useful as well. I don't know if we're going to do like a wild shapeshifters that easily in the mid-game, but it might happen, right? Nidalee bridges you across both. Fixed a bug where Blitz would hook a unit off the board if he died while casting. That's obviously kind of silly. And now he's more likely to get allies to target what Blitz pulls. This is cool. Blitz is definitely, I think, an underutilized character for most players. Blitz is quite good. I like Blitzcrank a lot. You can stack your Blitzcrank, get him to gold tier, and he actually one-shots things. But even just pulling the hyper carry from the back line and getting the focus seems really cool, so that's a good change as well. Braum now shows actually damage reduction. The first 2 tiers of Braum are now slightly stronger, and actually more than slightly stronger. Going from 60% to 70% damage reduction is a very substantial durability gain. Also want to point out that having 90% damage reduction is a lot, and it only comes in at 50 mana. So if you can get a gold tier Braum and throw him in the front line and give him a Thornmail, he's going to carry you some games. There's going to be some absurd stuff for Braum. And he's going to make sure he aims kind of at the farthest one and, you know, I guess spreads the shield out hopefully appropriately. Of course, that could be outplayed as well if you have, like, Rapid Fire Cannon Aurelion Soul here in the back corner and the rest of your comp over here. He'll aim at Aurelion Soul and, you know, maybe you hit the damage through, but we'll see what happens. Either way, pretty big stuff. Relentless Pursuit, second shot, deals a lot more damage, and it scales off AP, keep in mind. This is a lot of damage. This is really, really meaningful. Yeah, this is a big deal. I mean, with how much Gunslingers as, like, a mode is getting arguably nerfed to power neutral and Graves went down slightly, you can now say, okay, you know what? We're going to play Gunslingers, and we're going to go AP Lucian, and he's going to dash, and the second shot's going to one-shot somebody, and you're going to get 6 Sorcerers, going to do like 800 damage, and who knows. But I think this is a cool change. I think Lucian was definitely a bit underappreciated. And I want to point out, by the way, Lucian actually has really, really good base stats. He's, in my opinion, the best gunslinger in the game. As far as like being a carry is concerned, now certainly MF Spell is very good. If you can get her enough mana, she'll be very strong, and that's all kind of great. But in a lot of cases, like, Lucian is a really good auto attacker, and I think you don't have to go for like rapid fire cannon, hit 4 units the game plan, or hit 8 units the game plan. You can just kind of have Lucian be a good carry, and it should be pretty solid. Next up are nerfs to Pike. Now, what's interesting is, I think on paper this tells you, wait a second, Spear of Shojin's even more mandatory on Pike now. And that's true. Shojin is an even bigger deal on Pike now. But you still have to gain 125 mana instead of 100 mana in order to get your second spell off. So if Pike is taking damage, if Pike is auto-attacking, if he has Saracen Brace for some reason, that road is still going to be slower. So Pike's second stun will be slower. That is hard true. So the permastun Pike is not quite as likely. Next up, Rek'Sai drops out of combat for less time, stuns for longer, does more damage. Rek'Sai is definitely an underappreciated brawler. We're seeing Rek'Sai buffs, we're seeing Blitzcrank buffs, we're seeing very minor Warwick buffs here as well. We're seeing buffs to brawlers overall. They were definitely an underappreciated sort of unit type. And again, with the changes to how recurve bows work with low attack speed champions, brawlers actually needed probably some help overall because they are less good with attack speed. So probably a good thing overall. Cool to see. Next up is Shen, and I actually like Shen a lot. I think Shen is maybe OP now. He certainly didn't have like the best tank stats. If he was frontlining too heavily, he would actually get one shot before he could ever get a spell off. But now he's going to really, really, really reliably get that dodge zone in. This is super duper reliable. Getting just like a 2-star Shen to be your frontline for like your entire mid game is completely fine. If you weren't considering going Assassins, if you weren't considering going Elementalists and getting your ninjas in that way, he could just be there as just Silver Shen. And that spell is going to go off every time. And it's going to be a lot of extra durability against auto attackers. And he can kind of lead the charge there. It's going to be really, really powerful, I think. I think you definitely want to keep him in as one of the Blade Masters if you go into Draven. That's going to be a pretty big deal overall. Next up is Aatrox, another champion that I think is actually quite good and is underappreciated. I am going to be all about playing Aatrox this patch. I think Aatrox is already actually stellar and is now going to be absurd. So Aatrox has very good tank stats in the first place. He's one of the very best. In general, I have found that 3-drops are one of the most reliable types of units to get to 3-star, to get to gold tier. And Aatrox being a 3-drop that no one really wants, at least not until this patch, I thought it was very easy to try to get yourself to gold Aatrox, and it would happen. If you could survive the top 4 players, you would get gold Aatrox pretty reliably. So I'm pretty stoked about this. This is a pretty big buff to Aatrox. Aatrox is going to be really, really nice. 400, 700, 1,000 with the ability. Very easy to get the Q off. He's going to be pretty scary. Giving Aatrox Sorcerer, by the way, can make Aatrox your primary carry. Getting up to 75 mana when you already are a Blade Master and stab several times, he is going to get his spells off. Aatrox can absolutely be a melee carry in this patch. Evelyn getting a bit more health. Evelyn executing people a bit more. I think this is going to be reliably. I assume this is health. I don't know if it's health missing or current health. I'm going to assume it's current health, and it's actually more reliable to get to the execute threshold because they can be at 2/3 and it goes off. But she'll survive a little bit more. She's certainly going to do more damage by just like popping off at silver and gold tier. And they won't dodge the ability. So Evelyn, I know, was a champion that people thought was very unreliable. Obviously, never give her rapid fire cannon because she'll get out of her own ult range. But yeah, more reliably bursting down a target seems pretty good. Give her mana, she'll one-shot people. Next up is Gangplank. The barrels now apply on hit effects, so now you can try to play like red buff Gangplank or static shift Gangplank or something. That seems kind of cool. Don't think of other good on hit effects. Can't really think of them right now. Nice that there's some bugs that are getting cleared up. More attack speed, more health, though. That's definitely a big deal. There's like a lot of buffs to Blade Master, basically, right? Shen got buffed. Aatrox got buffed. Gangplank's getting buffed. Applies on hit effects now. He's more tanky. Gangplank is now a half reasonable frontliner. It's not great, don't get me wrong, but it's better than it was. His overall durability, like he has 840 effective health, which is among the highest for any not 4-cost unit. So that's actually pretty good. He's not quite as good as like Braum, because Braum is an absurd tank, but better than most things. So that's actually pretty nice. I think that's going to make him pretty effective. He's going to attack more often. He's going to get a spell off more often. And yeah, Gangplank might actually survive and be worth getting to silver, which is pretty cool. And considering that, yeah, he's a good bridge into Blade Master and Gunslinger. Gunslinger going to be more reliable. Yeah, I could really see Gangplank being useful here. But otherwise, was like people were very happy to sell Gangplank. He was definitely weak as an individual contributor. Katarina is going to do a better job of stopping healing. That's good. Kennen, small buffs here, 70 attack damage. And of course, keep in mind that in a lot of cases, Kennen's going to have ninja bonus, so it's going to be a lot of attack damage. He has very bad attack range, but as long as you put him in the midline, he'll still hit something. Overall, Kennen has, I would say, pretty good DPS. I think he's reasonably good at this. So, yeah, he has 45 DPS at level 1, not counting ninja bonus, and that is very, very, very high. Only Volibear has higher DPS than him, and Volibear has, like, absurd attack damage. So yeah, this is really cool, and that's again before ninja bonus, so I think he's going to be really quite nice. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be very powerful. This lets you, by the way, because one of the things that people did when they went ninja assassin or ninja, yeah, usually ninja assassin, is you would stack either the Akali or the Zed as the damage carry because they would crit so much. There is theoretically a world where if you can get gold Kennen, he's going to have absurdly high attack damage. It's going to go up to 252 AD. Gold Kennen has 252 attack damage per auto attack before ninja bonus. That's really, really high damage. And so playing 4 ninja into like Elementalist and stacking Kennen as an attack damage carry could be really, really valuable. Next up is Morgana, who doesn't whiff her ultimate anymore, does a bit more damage. I mean, very little at the bronze and silver tier, but hey, it exists at least. Yeah, I mean, basically all the demons are getting extra damage here. They're getting a little bit stronger in all cases, but the demon buff itself getting weaker at rank 1 and 2. Okay, cool. I like Morgana a lot. That seems nice. Poppy getting a lot. This is actually huge. Poppy is now going to be a really, really strong knight. So Poppy already actually had pretty good health overall, and now it's going to be kind of insane. So Poppy, looking at her actual stats, with 40 armor and, to be honest, decent health. Unless I typoed, she has 800 base HP. which maybe I typed, but I don't think I did. She has the highest base durability of any melee unit in the game before you find like Leona and Sejuani and Cho Gath. She has more than Gnar. She has more than Swain. Poppy, and she gets Yordle bonus. So Poppy is very, very tanky now. And she's going to have dodging, and she's going to stun by a half second more, and she's going to stun 2 or 3 targets. Poppy is going to be an absurdly good tank. Now, certainly, she was never as good as Sejuani, she was never good as Cho Gath, and now she competes. Because you can get her to 2 targets, and you stun right away. Like, Cho Gath puts the Q down, then they get popped up. Sejuani casts the spell, then they get stunned. This is a pretty good stun duration and a good number of targets. Poppy's now worth considering. Now, she's probably still not good as a standalone, but she's going to be really good with, like, just getting a Lulu and a Kennen in there, or just, you know, just like, well, you know what? Going to 2 Yordles and one of them being Poppy is going to be worth it. There's a lot of sets that are really easy to get, right? 3 Elementalists with Kennen is very easy to get. You have a lot of room there. And so saying, you know what? Yeah, let's throw in Poppy and 1 more. And now we have Yordle bonus Poppy. She's going to be really, really tanky. Savagery attack speed buffs and multiplicative. That's cool. It'll multiply against other items as well, which is cool. Shyvana actually getting a lot of benefits here. Like she's getting a lot of power. And again, keep in mind that Bronze Shyvana, even after all these changes, will still be squishier post-transform because the Shapeshifter bonus nerfs. But Silver Shyvana upwards is huge power gains. I didn't think that Dragon Shapeshifter like needed help very much, but apparently they want Shyvana to be a bigger tank. She's going to do more damage. She's going to have more health. She's going to be a really, really big deal, right? Transforming into a dragon, having even more bonus attack damage. Like, she's going to be really insane as a carry. Shyvana's going to be a hugely big carry. Silver Shyvana, always better than before. Gold Shyvana going to be insane. Going to be hard to find, but hey, you never know. Definitely a unit worth being excited about. Veigar now more reliably will destroy the low star champions. That's a good thing. I'm pretty sure it should just deal true damage to make sure you don't get screwed over by things. But I guess they want dragons to be immune, so maybe that makes sense. Whatever. Either way, Veigar more reliably going to cast a spell. Yeah, Veigar was a champion that kind of tended to fall off because destroying one unit was good, don't get me wrong, and he had like okay-ish stats in that like at least the spells would get off, but yeah, like 3 range meant he got to be in the back line, but his attack speed was really, really low at 0.55, so it was like kind of hard to get the spells out, but now, okay, the base damage of the spell is pretty decent, the one-shotting ability is nice, and 75 mana is not too hard to get to, so you know, maybe we start seeing that come out. But Veigar is definitely one of the weaker links there overall. One of the weaker Yordles, one of the weaker Sorcerers. You tended to skip him. You, generally speaking, want to cast it instead. But could have been workable, and hey, we'll see how it goes. Volibear also getting a lot of power and getting a lot of attack speed at 0.65 is quite good here. So, you know, puts him up to pretty much the highest DPS unit that costs less than 4 gold in the game. Or close to it, I should say. Tristana is actually like Misfortune. Okay, well, that's not fair. But yeah, I think Ashe actually had really high DPS as well. But other than that, basically, where's Ashe? Wait, I have Ashe in this chart. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, yeah, like there's a lot of gains to be had. Actually has higher DPS than Ashe. Yeah, Volibear has higher DPS than Ashe. Now he has maybe harder time finding targets. He has to walk between targets and whatnot, but yeah, Volibear's ult's going to get off really early. 75 mana only. That's quite easy to do. The damage ratio goes up. The health goes up. Like, there are just absurdly large buffs to brawlers in this patch. Every single brawler got a lot. Volibear is going to be a nutty carry in the next patch. Really, really, really consider brawlers. They're going to be really nice. Now, what's interesting is brawlers basically carried by Volibear getting a spell off, and so if you can play demons or get casted in and keep mana siphoning Volibear, then they don't really pop off at the end of it all. But Volibear's base DPS is very, 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 very high. He's going to be quite tanky. Again, he's going to lose some of the attack speed you were going to get from Recurve Bows. That's still something that matters, but a pretty big deal here. Next up is just Akali getting some small bugs. Doesn't whiff her Q. That's good. Sometimes did no damage. So Akali was already a huge carry, and she was bug-ridden. She had so many issues with doing her damage reliably. Akali probably, with these bug fixes, even with all these buffs to Volibear and everything else, probably remains the premier carry in Teamfight Tactics. I think she is absurdly strong. It's very easy to just dump items onto her. She will one-shot a lot of things. This is going to be a really, really big deal. Brand was another really big carry. It was easy to be the carry in the Elementalist comp. There's a lot of nerfs to Elementalist here, where the Elementalist set bonus going down. Brand having to get another 25 mana for the first spell is a really big deal. It takes a very long time to get to in some cases. Once you got the spell off and you were like double Shojin, then you were chaining them together, but getting the first spell off is going to take another auto attack or two, and it's going to be quite a bit of effort. That's going to matter quite a bit, and you want to kind of consider TF staying in the comp for blue card and things like that. Cho Gath was just kind of always the best tank. He's still, I think, the most durable, but down to only 1,000 health makes him a little bit less absurd. Knockup duration going down by half a second means quite a lot as well. And you can see, right, 1.5 to 2.5 on an entire army. You compare to Poppy, it's 2 to 4 on 1 to 3 units. So Cho probably still does more in big battles, but if your tanks live long enough to get a second spell off and you're down to like a 3-on-3, Poppy's better now. That's not always going to happen, but hey, you know, it's a thought. Cho Gath is still going to be very good, but now you kind of you can consider maybe Gnar goes in instead, maybe Sejuani goes in instead, maybe you don't need the Cho Gath quite as heavily. But that said, you're already going to really like running Brawlers because of the buffs that Brawlers got. Maybe you throw in Cho Gath just for the set bonus, and that can be okay too. He's still good, don't get me wrong, he's not the best by far. Draven getting a small attack speed nerf, he was generally speaking too good as a primary carry. You could often have like a 4 Gunslinger team where you would sell all 4 Gunslingers and just play Draven instead. He was definitely individually meta-defining. This is like the second time I've seen him nerfed now. I think he'll still be quite good. I think he's still a good character. Keep in mind that he is less effective than other characters are by the Recurve Bow changes, so I think he's still going to be pretty solid. Pretty nice changes to Gnar, so he gets 100 less health and 5 less armor. He was definitely being a really, really big carry overall. I want to make sure that, wait, I know I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, so 35 armor becomes 30, and the health going down a bit puts him below 1,000 base health early game. But keep in mind that he's gonna generally speaking, well, you never got Gold Gnar, right? You never, ever got Gold Gnar. And keeping all the math in mind with the Shapeshifter bug fix combined with nerf, if you did none of this, Gnar would be, like if you change nothing about Gnar would be weaker just from the Shapeshifter changes. Bronze Gnar gets a lot less health. Silver Gnar is basically identical as a character, but he also has 100 less health. Also has 100 less health, also has 5 less armor. This is a very big change. What was interesting to me was it felt like purple units were always worth throwing in as long as you could get a set bonus out of them. That like they were good enough at bronze because it was kind of hard to find the other copies that purple units were really, really good. The 4-cost units were really good. This starts to chip away at that. Where like maybe you don't get your spell off on Brand. Maybe Cho'Gath's not tanky in CC enough. Maybe Draven's not enough attack speed. Maybe Gnar's not tanky enough. In a lot of these cases, right, Sejuani losing quite a bit here as well. Interesting that 3, 4, 5 becomes 2, 3.5, 5. And you never hit gold Sejuani. So 3, 4 becomes 2, 3.5. So you're getting really substantial cuts to a lot of these purple units. Almost all of them getting pretty big hits. Akali's kind of unfazed, unscathed, and was already great. So I think Akali's a really big deal. But now what it really comes down to is Leona's more worth considering, which is cool. Leona's worth considering. But the tanks you would just grab and throw in, Sejuani, Gnar, Cho Gath, they're all weaker. You don't just toss in them and like, well, that's my tank. I only ever wanted to get Cho Gath. There it is. Comp's complete. You're more likely to rely on, say, hey, you know, maybe we want Leona. Maybe we want Braum. Maybe we can use, Volibear as the front line. Maybe Shyvana. Poppy especially. So this really changes what you want out of your tanks because if you can hit 3 Poppies, you're maybe better than 1 Cho Gath. Maybe you're better than 1 Sejuani. Maybe. Worth considering. And then finally, the Tier 5 champions, ones that you don't reliably get to silver. Sometimes you don't even see them in the game. But, Anivia, okay, reliability up, but she was never really considered that strong, so it's a nice buff bug fix. I don't know if it's really a bug fix, but nice buff. Ability is now much more reliable, which is generally speaking positive. If you can give her a lot of mana early on, she'll tend to attack frontline, ult early, and then ult the entire team instead of like, oops, I went for the Akali over here and I whiffed the entire squad. So generally speaking, I think this will tend to be a positive for her. It'll retarget if her ability died. That's a good thing as well. fix a bug, but she's going to ult less often. And MF was already not a sorcerer, not an elementalist, so she didn't get the double mana per auto attack that those characters did, but she does have very high attack speed. It is worth pointing out that she does have 0.85 attacks per second, and so she can get the ult off. If you give her a Sorc bonus, you give her a couple of Recurve Bows, things like that, I think she can kind of reliably get those spells out. If she ults, it is really, really good damage, but it's still a little hard to want to play MF. Also, again, to point out, more reliable Gunslinger bonus, where she's more reliably going to hit 3 targets with her auto attacks. She'll gain mana more quickly. Probably necessary to nerf this with Gunslinger getting better. Small buff to Yasuo. Ability applies on hit effects, knocks up for longer, and does more damage if you get him to silver or gold. Again, pretty unreliable to get silver tier 5 costs, but it could happen. Yasuo doing a bit more, applying red buff or stacking static shiv or whatever else with his Q. And that feels kind of nice as well. All right. Next up, big change. Items no longer benefit from AP. We have solved Locket stacking. 6 Sorcerer triple Locket was broken. Glad to see it gone. That's important. That's a big deal. Same with the Death Cap Luden stuff. All that was broken. Healing, shielding, and damage, the only things affected by AP. Items that do that no longer affected. One thing I actually really do like, because I like this, I think this is the coolest part of TFT, is spatulas when you do conversions. Converting characters into glacial or demon or whatever I thought was always really exciting, really cool, really fun, and now it actually basically... it's like if you look at a rapid fire cannon, you get attack speed, and bonus range. And here, if you did like Blade Master, you get attack speed, and Blade Master bonus. As long as you had other Blade Masters. And so the permutations of ways of using spatulas and doing cool things with your characters and making them interesting and finding new comps, that's like a unique and really cool thing out of TFT where... if you get a spatula, you can do some weird things with compositions where you're like, actually, what if we made a Nivea a demon? Well, you have more reason to do that instead of just simply taking second spatula and going Force of Nature and just throwing in some actual demon. You're a bit more incentivized to say, you know what? This spatula is going to give me 40 mana on a Nivea. That's really useful. Let's do it. It'll give Misfortune 40 ability power when she's a sorcerer. I think spatula into new unit type is the coolest itemization in the game, and I'm glad to see it getting buffed and being used more. I think that's really, really exciting. Cursed Blade can now further lower unit stats. It either halves them or subtracts like 40% or something. Something around there, I'm guessing. I'm sure there's information out there somewhere on a wiki somewhere, but definitely going to be a big deal in lowering their ability damage, going to lower their attack damage, going to lower their health. Those are the stats that scale on Star, by the way, is ability, auto attack damage, and health. So you can nerf stuff, make them squishy, pop things down. That's cool stuff. They won't reset a level, which is good. So you won't like heal people through it. That's a pretty important nerf. A bug fix, I should say. Frozen Heart apparently applies more consistently. That's cool. Good to see it being consistent. That's a positive. Guardian Angel pops up sooner with more health and restores Grievous Wounds, or clears Grievous Wounds. Okay. So now you can put it on, like, I don't know, again, we're going to go back to the Fiora example of, like, hey, what if we have a Fiora carry? Well, Fiora carry is going to pop up with more health and keep attacking. Rage Blade, slight buff. I guess, again, if you're going to put Rage Blade on people, it was because you're putting Recurve Bow on people, and with Recurve Bow getting nerfed, okay, small buff, okay. Gunblade no longer works with items. That's probably a good thing. Hooray. Ionic Spark. Now does 200 true damage instead of 75 magic damage. That is a really, really big change. Ionic Spark, I think, can be a good item, especially now that it's 200 true damage. That's a really, really big deal. But what I really care about, actually, is now Ionic Spark is silly with Phantom. Because Phantom puts you at 100 health, and Ionic Spark does 200 damage. So unless whatever I Phantom has lifesteal, I am killing whatever unit that is. I am pretty confident I'm going to like putting Ionic Spark on some random backliner anytime I play Phantom. Karthus or whatever. Kindred if I have to. Better on Karthus, though. Because I will one-shot whatever gets Phantomed as soon as I cast a spell. Lucian dashes, goodbye. MF ults, goodbye. In some cases, Cho Gath probably gets a spell off, or Sejuani probably gets their spell off, or whatever, but, like, I'm okay with one-shotting Aurelion Soul, and it works through Dragon debuff because it's true damage, so Ionic Spark is in there. Ionic Spark Phantom is in there. So Locket is now changed as well. As we discussed, shields like Locket no longer affected by ability power, or items like Locket no longer affected by ability power. But instead of affecting 7 units in a circle all around the unit, counting itself, it affects 5 units, 2 on each side, and itself. Mathematically, with the shield value going up to 300, there is more total shielding on the item and less constraints around what you have to place where. That said, of course, not affected by AP means that the initial Locket was actually always 240 because you had 20 ability power on your character, which meant 40 more shielding. So in the real world, this is a nerf to Locket. To be fair, triple Locket was broken. Now it's only, I think, still reasonable. I think it's still reasonable. It's still 300 shield to 5 units. That is still a good set bonus, right? That's still a good item for Morgana, who's kind of a frontliner already. Gets 300 bonus health, gets 20 armor, gets 20 AP, gets her ult off. That seems fine. I'm okay with that. Locket can go on like your Blade Master frontline team, where Shen and Aatrox and all these people line up in the front, and you give Fiora 300 more health, and maybe she doesn't get one shot. I think it's usable. Next up is Loons Echo, getting bug fixed from doing 100 damage and 1x AP to the splash. Now it's just 200 flat. That's probably a good thing. Probably a good thing. Yep. Good to flatten that out. So again, it's the same kind of stuff that Ionic Spark does, where every time anyone casts a spell, they take 200 true damage. Now Loons Echo, whenever I cast a spell, I do 200 in a splash, which makes it good for champions who cast spells frequently. You think about champions like double Shojin Pike, who ults a lot. He's going to get some value out of that. You look at Lucian is a great example of a really low-cost spell. Kha'Zix, low-cost spells. And now it's actually worth putting Luden's Echo in together on the character and saying, yes, you have Luden's Echo. Go do work. Glad that it's doing what it's supposed to do now. Small buffs from Erlenomicon. Fire Cannon now updates based on range, so Nidalee no longer has, I think, like 5 range in melee form or 4 range in melee form. It's only 2. Same for Release, same for Gnar. Unlucky, but I guess it had to happen. But it makes Nidalee less of a hard carry, where you just stack her with 3 items and she carries you for the first 7 levels. Here is what I was talking about with Recurve Bow, where instead of adding 0.15 attacks per second, it adds 20% more attacks. Which means at, I think it's... Yeah, if you attack 0.75 times per second or more, this is not a nerf for you. So looking at high attack speed units, Misfortune, Kale, Yasuo, Draven, we talked about before. That's... Akali is the same. Everyone else, pretty much... Oh, Fiora now. Everyone else gets nerfed out of this. So there's about 5 units where Recurve Bow is a buff. And I'm kind of curious, legitimately, about Rapid Fire Cannon Fiora. Maybe she's good. Really want to try. This is a strict buff to... I mean, Fiora got buffed and then gets buffed again with this change. Redemption now triggers before dying, which I think is super cool. No longer deals damage, that's okay. Redemption was kind of a joke item, and I'm glad you have a chance at it actually helping yourself out, and going out more quickly is a good thing as well. I guess Redemption would probably also trigger if you get Phantom debuffed. I would guess. Hurricane Remake. Instead of being essentially you deal double damage, which is 2 bolts, 50% damage, you just do 25% more damage to your target, but apply on hit effects again. So things like Static Shiv, things like Cursed Blade. I think Hurricane stacks correctly with Gunslinger. So you can do Cursed Blade, Gunslinger, I don't know, Rage Blade or whatever, Hurricane, and you just like down level their entire front line. And you just like work through that way. And you're just a debuff bot. I think there's some value in that. We'll see how that goes. Saracen Brace now sacks. That's a good thing. Static Shiv now always hits 3 additional targets rather than all champions in a frontal cone, but only activates 1 time per launched attack. So this is things like I attack and I Gunslinger, only goes out once. I attack with Gunslinger Hurricane, only goes out once. I'm Volibear with Lightning Claws, only comes out once. My understanding is that. Same with like Hurricane and Blade Master bonus. But so I know there was, if you watch like a bunch of PvE videos, there was some pretty absurd stuff with Static Shiv and Gunslingers. That's seemingly going away at least a little bit. Is worth pointing out, Shiv doesn't scale with anything. So it's an early game item that kind of falls off, but sometimes, you know, it's okay just to give Lucian mana and attack speed and have him ult more often and scale that way. Sometimes that's okay. But yeah, it's probably not the optimal item. Thornmail is pretty nutty. Okay. Reflected damage. Instead of 35% of physical damage taken, which, you know, if you had like 100 armor, you'd take half damage. You would reflect 35 damage back and you take whatever else. Now it's 100% of physical damage mitigated, which means this is strictly superior instantly. Because Thornmail is already 40 armor, champions have at least 20 armor, and with 60 armor, this is automatically a buff. This can't not be a buff to Thornmail. Also does true damage, which is a really big deal, because now you do another like 20% or 16% damage out. So it's buffed here, and it's buffed here. This is really, 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 really big. This is another reason for Phantom debuff to be insane, because you will kill whatever you Phantomed when it hits your frontliner. This is really, 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 really strong. Really, 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 really strong. Thornmail is going to be a big deal. It's going to do a lot of damage to Draven. Draven will kill himself before he kills the tank. As long as the tank, like as long as your tank gets to 100 armor and nothing else helps kill it, which, okay, that's a little questionable, you will kill whatever you're hitting. Whatever's hitting you. This is going to be pretty nutty. Also, it means that this scales with Guardian bonus. If you can put a bunch of Guardians around your Thornmail target and you get like 3 Guardians on them and they have 180 bonus armor and they're sitting at like 250 armor now, they only take like less than 1/3 of the damage and they reflect that other 2/3 back at the target. So now there's like this Guardian Thornmail synergy going on. And we saw Guardians get buffed. Braum got giant buffs and Leona got giant buffs. And worth pointing out that I'm pretty sure Braum's spell will work with Thornmail. Now you can still never do more than the target's attack damage back at you. You can never do their full damage back. You can never do quite the full damage because you can't hit 100% physical mitigation. But you can get really close and do a lot of damage back at people. Mogs is now a missing health regen, which means at half HP, it's the same item. In general, this means that if your tank dies first and everyone focuses it, it will not get enough regen to live. But if you get down to like a 3-on-3, and Shyvana is magic immune and is sitting there just like fighting a Draven, she might out-regen some of the damage output. Maybe not a Draven, but you know, something. Level 2 Ashe. Zeke's getting the same change that Locket did, where it's no longer a circle around the target. Mathematically, 7 targets at 10% is worse than 5 targets at 15%. With, again, arguably softer constraints around positioning. It also turns on to full power earlier on to the game. So you can win streak with Zeke's or win streak with Locket really early on because you can affect more units for more effect really quickly. So generally all nice things there. VFX on Arrow now has sounds. Apparently you can sometimes duplicate a champion. That's an oops. That's good. You can get your end of game stats properly. Melee champion is going to have better AI and a bunch of random other bug fixes listed as above. So, big patch. Wow. Brawlers got a lot more powerful, but they did lose power out of recurve bows. Elementalist taking a very needed power down. Demons getting a very needed power reshape. A lot of cost for units getting down in power as needed. And Poppy looks good. Fiora looks good. Gangplank looks good. Aatrox looks amazing. And I'm excited for ranked. See you, everyone.